Hey everyone, it's Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storyteller Show. Today, we are going a little bit off the beaten path for our innovation discussion today and the amazing stories that come out of Africa when it comes to innovation. I'm beyond thrilled to be joined by my guest today, Nkem Nweke, who is an innovation enthusiast specializing in problem framing, design sprints, and disruptive product development. With a passion for reshaping narratives, his journey is rooted in unlocking local problems morphing into solutions that transcend borders. Based in Lagos, Nigeria, Nkem brings a unique perspective to the global innovation stage, merging creativity with strategic design thinking and ready to challenge norms and redefine possibilities. He is on a mission to drive impactful change in the dynamic world of innovation inside of Microsoft. Thank you so much for joining us from Lagos rather, and a place I have always wanted to visit. Take us for a moment just into the innovation streets of Lagos for so many of my listeners who haven't been to your beautiful country yet, myself included.
Yeah.
What's the vibe around innovation? Do you feel like as you're in one of the biggest cities in the biggest economy in Africa, that this pulsing desire for innovation, like we feel in Silicon Valley or London or New York, is a heartbeat like it is for so many of us here?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Susan. Happy to be on your show. So picture this. Lagos is a bustling city of about 25 million people. It's basically the melting point of the country, Nigeria, which is probably about 250, 300 million people. And with different cultures coming together, like you mentioned, in a place like New York or London, you have young people as well, thriving, doing businesses. From a technology perspective, Lagos is the place to be. Lagos is the startup capital, if I should use that word, of Africa, really. And you see that with about probably 7 or 8 unicorns, if I'm correct, in Africa as a whole, and Nigeria probably has, and which is also residing in Lagos. Nigeria probably has maybe half of them, as it were. So
Mm.
Lagos is a great place to be. It's very, very fast paced and very energetic as well. And people get the best out of here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go originally to South Africa as a place where innovation was taking hold, but it seems to me like Lagos has kind of surpassed places like Cape Town for new and exciting ventures. Would you agree?
Oh, I agree. And the stats basically show it as well, right? So while South Africa is doing great, I think there's some level of aggressiveness that comes maybe with Nigerians, but also Lagos is a place that challenges you. I think the government is also bringing the enabling environment, especially to tech, to make sure that young people are involved either through competitions or hackathons or symposiums and the rest. People here are very, very engaged, and I'm not surprised that it's the startup capital for Africa.
Yeah, and I think that's true at the university level too, right? I mean, we're really beginning to cultivate this startup culture at the student level so that these hackathons aren't just taking place among people in industry, but rather it's really beginning to get that vibe at the university level too.
Yeah, I agree with you. So there's a place in Lagos called Yaba, YABA,
Mhm.
and that is basically where you have the University of Lagos. You have a couple of colleges of technology there as well. But interestingly, it's where you have, one of the biggest hubs in the country, which basically brings in young people. So you basically see young people come together, they challenge themselves, they see somebody who is using Python or R to do great things, and they just sit together. And the interesting thing is, Nigerians are very ingenious people, able to stay around you for a while. I may not know the foundations of what you're doing, but trust me, I can mimic you fairly enough. And the university community is a place that also cultivates innovation and allows people to try and hack new things. So basically, that area around the environs is actually a hotspot in Lagos for where most of the startups in the country actually came out from as well.
So Silicon Yaba then.
Or you call it Silicon Yaba, yeah. Or people call it Yabacon Valley and stuff like that. Lots of different names, but
Yabacon Valley. I like
yeah,
it. I
yeah,
like it.
it's a place where young people come together and do their stuff.
Yeah. So, Nkem, tell us a little bit about your own journey. How did you come to the innovation pathway? Because it's never a straight line. How did you come to find it?
So this is my eighth year thereabout in Microsoft. And I basically started as a software asset manager covering the Africa region, which basically ensured that I reached out to most of our enterprise customers who were using Microsoft software and also paying a lot for it. Wanted to make sure, obviously, that we got repeat business, but importantly, that customers were happy using our solution, and which would cause repeat business. And in developing a relationship with these customers, what I also, discovered was they told me about their problems. They told me how they wanted technology to do X and Y and Z for them. And selfishly, at some point I could help them, at some point I couldn't help them, but I felt that need to see how we could capture their market, as it were. And when the Microsoft engineering team came in to Africa, which was about 3 years ago, this role for innovation came out. And innovation obviously has to do a lot with research and development. So I got in for the role, and the whole idea was, while we have about 600 engineers today who are building, supporting, integrating everything about Microsoft in our Lagos and Nairobi office, my role basically is to look out within our local environment to say, is it possible we find unique use cases that we can build probably the next best product out of Microsoft of? And I share that with my team. They take it up to executive leadership and see if we can get another at it. And that's basically how we see innovation, or I came into the innovation role. So having to engage with customers across industry to find out what their problems are over the past years, I found it very interesting, and there's quite a lot to learn from them as well.
And it's fascinating because Microsoft is just one catalyst. Are you seeing like some of the other larger tech companies flourish around you in Lagos as well?
Oh yes, in Lagos you have AWS, you have Google, you have Oracle, all the big four consulting firms, they're all here. So big tech and the rest are quite around us, as it were. The opportunity is huge and hopefully enough for everybody. But as Microsoft, we want to cage as much as we can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, where there's good talent, right? All of the big companies will follow for sure.
Correct, correct. So Microsoft basically has what you call the Global Development Center Initiative, which is basically where engineering business is housed. And interestingly, coming into the Africa region about 3 years ago, Africa is the seventh Global Development Center, like I mentioned, with our sites in Lagos and Nairobi. And the whole idea is to get young people who would begin to build for Microsoft, but also hopefully solve the problems that we have. And again, Nigeria is a 250 million plus people economy, and we have about 60% or more of that are young people, right? So there's an opportunity for those young people while working for big tech, also solving the problems, which we see around us as well.
Your own experience in working in innovation. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on.
So what we've been doing so far as an engineering team is engaging and understanding what the problems are within the industry. I'm a big fan of ensuring or looking out for what those problems are. We live in the days where people are always solution focused, which is good, but we need to fall in love with the problem. We need to make sure, again, as an organization like Microsoft, is big enough. So the task for me is go into the industry, at least select a few industries, go and build relationships there, go and understand what the value chain is within the industry. And in building that relationship, we can now say, hey, this is where we think technology X or Y can be impactful to you, or this is where we see an opportunity, and we're able to extrapolate and see that that opportunity is large enough for us as an organization like Microsoft, and we go in and hopefully begin to develop and build something and see if it's where we want to go. So for now, the projects that I've been involved in are basically in that identification stage across industries. And again, it takes time. It could be a little bit frustrating, but if you really want to hit gold, then you need to dig deep. So we're at the point where, as an innovation team, we're digging deep, we're engaging, we're understanding the environment, and we're putting together use cases, hopefully, for what next we're going to build.
Yeah. And what do you think makes it different doing innovation in Lagos versus doing it in France or in Silicon Valley or up in Redmond?
So Africa is unique. We have our unique challenges as well as our unique opportunities. The Western world has gone quite a bit and progressed in quite a number of things, but we have challenges, for example, with access. We have challenges with infrastructure. We have challenges with literacy. We have challenges from a policy and regulatory point of view. And we need to carefully meet those different issues based on where they are. For example, when you talk about infrastructure, you see a case where internet penetration needs to be a bit better for people to enjoy it or even appreciate the full extent of this great technology that you've brought, right? On the other hand, even where you have internet penetration as well, because of the affordability of it, there are people who today, and the stats basically say that about probably 80% of people in Africa or the global south live below, I think, $1 or $2 a day. And for somebody who is just aching to make $1 or $2 a day to go home, you will be surprised that having data or internet connectivity is not on his list of to-do things, right? Because what he's looking for is clean water. What he's looking for is a safe place to lay his bed at night to sleep. So the question for us is, how do you, and on the flip side, technology is also moving quite fast, whereby you now have proliferation of mobile phones. So yes, some people are able to have, cheap mobile phones to which they use to do their business, as it were. So you see people nowadays who are basically born in the cloud, right? But affordability is an issue. And the question before us is, how do you build solutions that can meet people where they are, right? We have companies today who say they have 2G networks, 4G networks, right? But I maintain that Africa, hopefully, I think, based on where we are, would be in a 2G, no G environment for the foreseeable future, at least for a while. And the question is, how do you build solutions to meet people with that level of connectivity, right? Because yes, you have today, we talk about emerging technologies, talk about AI and all that good stuff, but AI for who? AI maybe for you and I, right? But for the 80% of people who are below the poverty line, for the 80% of people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, AI may not mean that much to them because they're still at the lowest hierarchy of needs, as it were. But I believe that with technology advancing so fast, we're able to see how we can bridge that gap. So clearly, innovation in the West and innovation in Africa is different again because of challenges, but interestingly as well, because of the opportunities that we have.
But it's fascinating because I think a lot of people don't even realize that these large language models, a lot of them, all the content is being fed in them through teams that are working in Africa, right? I mean, ChatGPT has involved huge companies
Yeah.
to that all African talent that is feeding these large language models every day. It doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, and I think it's a testimony on one end to the fact that there's capacity in Africa to be able to feed and support those models. But on the flip side, I was discussing with a colleague of mine a while ago, and we're saying, how can we again refocus to begin to build language models on our own local languages, right? Because those language models are built in English, and you again have probably a huge number of people. The world today had about 7,000 indigenous languages globally. Africa had about 2,140.
Wow.
And we still can't, for example, in my local language, I'm Igbo, if I type in Igbo on ChatGPT, teach me how to make some kind of soup or some kind of food. ChatGPT obviously doesn't understand my language, and it would say, and I've tried this before, it says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But interestingly, it says, I suspect you're talking about egusi soup, for example, and that's what I use, right? A kind of delicacy we have. And it basically gave me the steps in English and how to make that soup. But ChatGPT did not understand that I was imagining myself as a local who cannot communicate in English and who has typed out in ChatGPT my local language or dialect, right? But it has obviously picked from the internet this egusi soup because obviously it's all around and it's giving me a direction, but it gave me a direction in English, which probably means that large language models and technologies like AI would not be useful to a huge amount of people because there's no inclusion, as it were, right? So I guess what we should be thinking of as Africans is how do we develop our languages in such a way that they form data sets and we can begin to build models out of it. It is said that the English language, the English dictionary has about 900 new words added to it every year. And we should be worried and concerned of how many new words are added into our own language so that we can make good use or enjoy this great opportunity and technology, AI and the likes of them that we see doing great and impactful things in our world today.
Yeah. And that I wonder if AI is going to solidify English as the global language, or if these large language models will very quickly come on in different languages so that we can preserve all of these different languages through AI. What do you think?
I think it will. I'm always thinking about, what the nexus is going to be. But to your point about preserving language, preserving culture, we need technology to help us do a lot of that today. But it doesn't also remove from the fact that there's a human element that needs to be conscious of ensuring that these languages get into the model, right? That these languages are written in the correct way or pronounced in the right parlance, just to make sure that there is no bias or misinterpretation when it is being used. So the human element is something that is always going to be there. But I'm very hopeful with AI, the technology, hopefully to do a lot, especially for low income or low resource countries that have this challenge around languages.
What do you think that we can learn from your work at Microsoft and how you've looked at the innovation process that maybe a better resourced office would not have to deal with, or have found creative ways to deal with this constraints? We talk a lot about constraints on this show as being helpful and sometimes less helpful to the innovation process. But what do you think
Yeah.
we can learn from some of the work that you've done?
Well, I think that first of all, Microsoft is a great place to work. Microsoft has different frameworks or approaches to innovation, which is just great, and it helps everybody in role to think innovatively in everything that you're doing. We have the Microsoft Garage, which is a spot within the office space where people can go and work and prototype and at least try their hands with everyday issues that may not necessarily be their 9 to 5, or sometimes if it's your 9 to 5, it's still open for you to go try and see if you can hack or explore the next big thing, right? So it's an environment that basically enables you. But for people who are not opportuned to be in that space, I think it's around communities and ecosystems that begin to talk and share around innovation and different models and different approaches, which is basically growing now because, like I mentioned earlier, with the startup ecosystem and probably about 3, 4 unicorns that we have within the country as well, you get to see young people who begin to ask those why questions. How are we doing this? What's the solution about? What problem are we really solving? And with that, you begin to see that you're raising the bar and the consciousness of innovation within the ecosystem. And I believe that as we continue to do that, we'll begin to see more and more solutions and that solve at least the most wicked problems that we see in communities and environments in Africa as a whole.
But it feels like you got to have the infrastructure, right? So whether you're putting in data centers and nodes, right? I mean, we really have to find the connectivity has to be the foundation of anything, right? And then what it seems like is you're also dealing with things on different scale. So the distances are vast, right? So that the technology infrastructure has to be able to work across huge geographies. I guess satellites are helping us with that. And then the other side is your actual on the ground customer by Western standards might be MSME, right? We're looking at doing innovation among what we'd consider smaller businesses, those with fewer than 5,000 employees or 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
So how does it affect your product development when you have like these giant data centers, right, that need to be able to house all of this information, but the end customer is really a much smaller entity? How does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, so I really think that an approach could be to build or develop or explore product development in chunks or in phases, if I should use that word, because
Mhm.
our markets are, like you mentioned, a bit much smaller. In fact, MSMEs sometimes can be as small as probably even 200 or less. But still, they need to innovate. Still, they have customers who are willing to buy their products, but they need to think about how they are affected either through currency fluctuations or either through competitions that is coming from outside of the country in, right? And we have different business groups or ecosystems that begin to think about this stuff. For me, I think it's the community that basically helps us have more exposure into what is happening and how we can begin to tackle it. Like I mentioned, we're a big opportunity as Microsoft as a big company, but small companies also struggle. And sometimes you see some government interventions. Sometimes they have to bootstrap and do it on their own. But what we begin to see is for those who stay the course, you begin to see those success stories in the work that they do.
Mm. So tell us a little bit about, is there a specific project that you're working on, and how do you get people to buy in to the changes that you're trying to create in your
So
region?
I think it's all about storytelling in such a way that people relate them. When we see the start within Africa, it's relatable to at least people within our folk because this is where we live, this is where we thrive. And the whole idea is to begin to share them these details and also show them the opportunities of what can be, right? Everybody wants a better life. Everybody wants to live in safer places. They want to operate and do their businesses in such a way that it's easier for them to think about the opportunity that co-pilots, for example, will bring to you today, right? It ensures that you're doing your work in less time, right? And you can either meet the demand of your customers faster. So I start obviously with the storytelling bit of it. Obviously, you're sharing some level of stats, you're sharing some level of reports or researches to them. And for there, you're also sharing what the potential ROI, if I should use that word, is. An ROI could be revenue, ROI could be impact, ROI could be mind share that is being, thrown out at the instance of a product being built as well. So for us, within the innovation team for Microsoft Engineering in the region, what we're primarily focused on now is we are going out to understand the environment. Again, because we're engineers, right? We don't know what we don't know. Most of us basically hunkered down in the bunker and we're coding and the rest. But in going out to the customers, we're trying to ask them, what's a day in your life? What are the problems that you see? How have you used technology or not to solve your problem? What is your competition even saying? What does the future roadmap look out for you? Hopefully getting answers to all these questions, you begin to piece them together, and in building relationships with them as well, they now begin to see you as partners. And in doing that, at a point, you're able to tell them, because I know this much of you, this is where I think AI can be support to you. Or this is where we see a unique use case, and we as an organization either want to partner with you, or we as an organization want to set out to build it because we know it's going to be a game changer especially in Africa or the global south region. So these are the steps that we're taking. Sometimes it could be a bit too methodical, but again, as a company for Microsoft, we want to make sure that, well, yes, we fail, but at least we're learning lessons from there, and we're using those lessons to be able to provide or create the change that we desire.
And where's the friction? Where's like the pushback where people are like, we're fine, thank you. We don't need any new innovation because this happens everywhere. Where's the friction point in trying to move things forward when things get stuck?
The friction point sometimes can be knowledge, a mental block. Probably they don't understand it well enough, or they probably think that in introducing this new innovation, you're going to upturn or mess up their market. So they don't want anything to shake that, to shake the current system as is. The friction also could probably be cost. Maybe this is too expensive for me right now. I'm fine where I am. I'm happy with what I have. Let's probably talk to you sometime in the future and see how we can work around it, right? But these are, even though these are barriers, the whole idea is to keep on showing them what is possible. And most often than not, we get people who are able to work with us around that.
Yeah, I mean, because this is a challenge every innovator faces, right? Is the pushback on
Right.
going too fast or too far before the customer is ready.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think you find customers sometimes who always say that technology is going too fast for them, which is not in anybody's control. The world is moving fast as well, and sometimes understand their pains because they've made projections as at where they are. So introducing new technology is going to probably change lots of things that they don't plan. So sometimes they want to be stationary, right? But like I mentioned, we keep on pushing the needle. We keep on showing them what's possible and hoping that we get converts at the end of the day.
Mm. Well, this has just been a very enlightening conversation. I have three hot seat questions for you that I ask all of my guests who come on the show. So, in your mind, what is the greatest innovation of all time? In all of human history, what's the greatest innovation?
Greatest innovation. I could have said AI. I could have said the internet, but I think the printing press.
Mm,
I think with what Gutenberg did was in being able to democratize information, it basically opens the world to unlimited opportunities. So when you think about that, I know there are quite a number of great things people could mention, but I think it's very, very unique because imagine if today information was just in the hands of a few. Imagine what they could do with it, right? Today, even in technology world, you see where people talk about open source. It wasn't necessarily built by you, but you can jump into it and make magic out of it. That is
sure.
basically likened to what Gutenberg and the printing press has done. So I think that, to me, that would be the greatest innovation of all times.
And because we try to dispel the myth of a single hero innovator, what innovation team in human history would you have liked to have joined if you could have the opportunity?
I think the Edison labs.
Yes.
think I think those guys they were way ahead of their time. There's something about them that really resonates with me. And whenever I travel, I try and go to the laboratory, and there are people who I really hope that I could be a part of their team. I think they're doing quite a great job.
Yeah. It's not too far away from where I live, and it's the original incubator, right? It's the
Yep.
original accelerator, except
Yeah.
Edison got to take credit for all of the innovations that came out of that place. He got all the patents. And my last question is, what's something you would like to see innovated that has not yet been innovative? Something, a new invention that you think would be fantastic, or something that really pisses you off that you just wish somebody would fix?
I can tell you that the pissing off part. So picture this. It's 9 a.m. in Lagos, Nigeria. It is 4 p.m. in Shanghai, and it's probably 11 p.m. or 12 midnight Redmond time.
Mm.
Now, I am part of a team, and this is our distribution, but we have to work. right? So imagine at 9 a.m., I'm done with 2 cups of coffee. At 4 p.m., that guy is basically shutting down. And at 11 p.m., you don't even exist anymore. So is there a possibility to have some technology that would maybe unify time in a strange way? I don't know. It sounds crazy, but it would be good to have people with the same energy level whenever we need to connect and do work that is important to us as well.
Yeah, it's time, right? Well, I'm just so thrilled that you could be on the call with us today on the show. And Nweke, how would you like people to get in touch with you if they have questions about all of the incredible things that you're doing
Oh,
at Microsoft?
I'm very accessible on LinkedIn. I think that's my favorite of all time. So find me on Nkem Nweke on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to follow you or accept your invite.
Thank you so much. We'll absolutely do that. And Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah.